So good afternoon, good morning, whatever time of the day it is for everybody here. So I'd like to welcome here Aisling Hayes from a company called Krinu. That's Krinu. So welcome, Aisling. Great to have you on this recording today.
Hi, Tom. Thanks very much for having me.
Excellent. So listen, I'm going to ask you a few questions just to get to know a bit more about your business. So tell us, what do you do? What does Krinu do? For how long have you been doing it?
Yeah, so Krinu is a sales enablement tool built for what we call the messaging age. So over the last few years, there's been a steady increase of B2B sales teams communicating more with their customers on messaging. When I say messaging, I mean apps like WhatsApp, Telegram, Signal, other apps like this. And so while this is great for giving immediacy of contact, it creates issues when it comes to visibility across the company, forecast accuracy, and overall performance. So what we do is we aggregate communications from these different messaging apps, and then we provide actionable insights for sales reps on actions they can take to actually accelerate the deal. So we improve forecast accuracy, we improve visibility, and we create a level playing field for all reps and everyone in the company as to what's actually happening.
Okay, so with that in mind, then, who can you give us an idea of who would a good customer be for you?
Yeah, so we typically work with B2B sales teams. And so where we see, I suppose, our ideal or our best customer are more enterprise type sales teams. So teams doing a minimum sales cycle of 3 months with a minimum ACV of 50,000. And the reason for that is because the challenge with enterprise deals is that they have to keep a relationship going for a super long period of time, and they have to engage multiple stakeholders. So an average enterprise deal has 10 to 20 different stakeholders. And so what we do is we help them keep that relationship going and keep the deal progressing as well.
Okay, excellent. And I know you're as a startup mode and stuff like that, but in so far becoming a business owner, what do you think the biggest learning you've learned along this journey so far?
That's a good question. I suppose the biggest learning is that you always need to be able to adapt. You never know what's coming around the bend, whether that is something internal within the company, say, an unexpected obstacle within your product development, which affects your timing, or, macro conditions like what we're seeing now in terms of, we're currently fundraising. So, that kind of event happening, you always have to be ready to adapt. And I think having that kind of mental skill is super important. And one of the key things I've learned.
Yeah. And even when you mentioned going there to raise funding, that must be kind of a scary moment for everybody. You've never done it before, and you're not asking for 5 shillings or 50 pence. You're asking for a lot of money. Has that been an interesting journey in itself?
Yeah, it has definitely. I mean, my background is sales, so at least made me a little bit more used to kind of pitching, but it's very different pitching to an investor than it is to a customer. And it's very interesting dynamic because at various points, it flips between the buyer and the seller. It's like you're both evaluating each other, yet both selling to each other at the same time. And there's a lot of, I would suppose, unspoken events that happen. Sometimes a question isn't a straight up question. It's pushing for something else.
And leading for something else, digging deeper.
Yeah. And that's kind of the main challenge I find of I think afterwards, oh, did they mean that? Did they mean something else? And so being prepared for that is, I think, been the hardest part of just being able to run the process properly and understand what's happening.
Excellent. And your team, therefore, they're kind of spread around the place at the moment. Where are they all based?
Yeah, so we are a global team. So my 2 co-founders, one is based in Singapore and one is based in Boston in the States. And then I'm in Ireland. And so then what we do is, so we are a kind of, remote first team. But we make it a point to meet up no longer than every 3 months. Because we like to, I think when it comes to brainstorming, it's important. Sometimes when you're in physical location, it makes it a little bit easier. But I suppose one benefit of COVID is it makes that kind of setup more normal. And I think for a lot of tech companies now and tech startups, that's how they're approaching it as well.
Excellent. So tell me, do you have any favorite quotes or sayings that you use, that you kind of keep at the foremost of your mind when you're out there every day?
I don't know. Favorite quotes, I suppose it kind of ties back to what I was saying before. It's kind of always expect the unexpected. Every day, don't get too stuck in terms of say a set agenda, because you never know what's going to appear. And be fluid as to what a situation happens. But yeah, I would say that's my go-to saying.
Okay, and tell me, what have you learned most about yourself in your journey so far? Is there anything that kind of you've learned that you say, oh, I didn't think this, but now I realize that this is what I am or I've become? Anything interesting there?
In terms of learning about myself, I think that one thing that I never so I think if you ever spoke to some of my friends, they would always consider me not necessarily the most biggest stickler for like time. I've never really, I'm known basically for being late all the time for everything.
Right.
But in actually, when I have my own company, I'm a lot more of a stickler of time for both myself and for everyone in the company. Like if we're doing a meeting and the other person is late or something like that, it's something that I never expected me to be. But I suppose the biggest learning overall as well has been the fact that when you are running a company, the buck does stop with you and there is no one else to blame. So it forces you to be very self-critical and knowledgeable about what your potential weaknesses are. And so that's been an overall learning as a whole.
And as a matter of interest, then you did college, you did all the usual things that everybody else does.
Yeah.
So along the way, would you have a best coach or mentor that you've ever worked with?
So definitely in my first sales job, they were with a tech company. They're now a unicorn. The company invested a lot into sales training, because a lot of the sales people were like myself, maybe had previous jobs, but it was their first sales job. And I had a number of coaches and managers in that who definitely made me the kind of salesperson I am today. And for any other company I've ever worked with, that they have never invested as much as that particular company. So I always go back, and even those people I still have very strong relationships with, and I speak to all the time if I encounter a problem or I help them. And so that was really, I suppose, instrumental in my career.
So you can see that there was some value in doing that. I have to say, during my time, I didn't do that enough, and I learned it later in life. But wow, it's just transformational.
Yeah.
When you get into that space, very good. So tell me, what does the future look like to you now, Ashley? And what do you see as the main challenges you're going to face now moving forwards in the next couple of years?
Yeah, so I suppose like our ambition for Creanew is to become $1 billion company. Yeah, that is. I think, for anyone kind of creating a company like ours these days, that is the goal.
Like Wayfire.
Yeah, of course. I mean, great Irish success story.
Yeah.
And so that's where we view, I suppose, our end goal of what we want to be. We'd love to be, publicly traded company, and reach that level. Obviously, to get to that point, it requires a lot of work. We're still in very like the early stages of it. And so there is a lot of things that we don't know right now. And I suppose being able to handle, to be able to move quickly, to be able to hire the right staff, to build the right team around you is probably the most important thing. And that will be probably the biggest obstacle. But I think, in the age that we're living now, there's never been more opportunity for businesses to be created and for business growth. And that's what's a really exciting time.
Yeah. And with the platform that you're trying to put together, it is a platform.
Yeah.
Yeah. With the platform you're putting together, it's going to be a kind of a global thing. So you can actually hire pretty much anywhere you want.
Yeah.
Providing you get the right people. So recruitment would be way up there on your wish list.
Yes, it is definitely. I mean, it is beneficial though that yes, we can hire anywhere. That is one unique benefit, but I suppose then it becomes down to people are always the biggest challenge in a business as well, of keeping everyone happy and motivated. And when you have a spread out business, it can make it even harder. So that will be, I suppose, a challenge as well.
So that's when you got to become a great leader.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me, just as an aside then, for taking into account your young age, that you're getting involved in a business with huge aspirations, which is great to hear. I wish you every success in this journey. What would you say to anyone thinking of going into a business? Do you have any advice to?
As in going into creating their own business?
Yes, so they're starting up their own business. What any little bits of advice you'd like to share with?
I think first thing is be fearless. It's the most important requirement. I feel like, let's be honest, the likelihood of failure is more likely than the likelihood of success. So you need to have very strong self-belief in what you're doing. And that's super important. When it comes to the actual business and like the problem that you're looking at, I think validation is super important. So making sure that you're speaking to people, to speak to your potential customers all the time, because at the end of the day, you can build the most beautiful looking product, but if it doesn't solve a real problem, it doesn't matter. And so those are kind of the two things that I think are really important: being positive and customers. And once you have that, hopefully success.
Yeah, and that's interesting. So with your two partners that you started off with, you would have started off with, here's a problem.
Yeah.
And come up with a solution, or did you come up with the solution first before you actually defined the problem?
No, we came up with the problem. So my background, as I mentioned before, is sales. So this is a problem that I knew extremely well. And then one of my co-founders comes from a background of sales ops and strategy. So he understands the other more administrative side of sales. So basically we started off with the problem and explored multiple solutions. And the product has developed over time. Initially it was a lot more broad, and we've narrowed it down now as an initial focus to be more targeted, but over time we'll probably grow it out from there.
So may I ask you then, from a monetary level, are you looking for a kind of recurring revenue model type thing? Is that where you're hoping to get to?
Yes. So our pricing model is a monthly subscription model.
Yeah. And your website, which I can say is creenu.com. Mm-hmm. Okay, so a lot of people can go on and check that out and see what it is. So just to clarify it again, for a lot of people who are going to see this video here, a minimum size of company that you'd need, and I should be looking at you, would be what would be what? 5 employees, 10 employees, 100 employees? Is there a minimum level?
So we always think it in terms of the sales team. So ideally we would look for a minimum 5 members of the sales team. But we have some of our initial users are considerably more large than that, have 2,000 sales reps. So it is a broad range.
So in an ideal world, it's the larger companies who have a larger sales force, and this kind of gives them something they can get teeth into and improve their communication amongst themselves. So it's good for the leaders of their business, also for the sales teams, and they can communicate more clearly through this.
Yes, it's to provide more visibility and to improve their performance, because the key problem is the CRM, which is supposed to be the central source of truth, doesn't have accurate data. So we're plugging in better data, delivering better insights, which ultimately leads to better performance across the team.
Excellent. Aisling, I'd like to thank you so much for doing the short interview with us. I hope you've enjoyed it. I certainly have, learning about it. Wish you every success in your endeavors, and maybe we'll talk again. And I hope everybody's listening in here, if there's anything that would like to find out, they can make contact with you, Aisling Hayes at Creenu, KRINU.com. So do check it out, guys. Aisling, thank you so much indeed for attending today. Really appreciate it.
Great. Thanks, Tom.